It's your boy Attorney Cal here, back. Super excited to be back. Today we're gonna have a really dope session. We're gonna talk a little bit about non-interactive interactive streaming. Um, in the meantime, let me give some shout outs. Um, my moderator is gonna help me with the PowerPoint. That up. Before we do that, PowerPoint is pulled up. Let's see who we got in the building. We got Jeremy Swiney from Eugene, Oregon. Thank you for joining. We got Fifth on the Beat. We got Camilo Chris. I'm online for Mozambique. I want to go there. Anthony Peralta. Let's see who we got. Brandon Streeter. Travis Howard. Tommy Miller Jr. Let me see. Who else we got? That boy Butter, what's going on? A6 Kitty, what's going on? Camry 411, what's going on? We got Tiger Backwoods, Fantastic Beats. Let's see. What's up, Bufo? Jimmy McDonald. We got Cloud9. Let me see. What else we got? Just saying yes, please. Let me go back to my comments. So let's see who else we got here. Who else? I see questions coming in already. I just want to make sure that we acknowledge and hit everybody. Travis Howard, what's going on from Portland, Maine? Let's see who else we got. G Life Beats, what's going on, man? I appreciate you always tapping in. Sir Killing, what's going on? Yeah, so like before we jump in today, I think the reason why I really want to do this topic is because my overall goal here is just to make sure that we kind of all on like an equal footing, as it pertains to certain things that are like a little bit more nuanced, right? Like when you think about, some of these random topics, whether it's mechanical royalties or sound recording or publishing or just a couple of these nuanced things, one of the main things that we always want to consider is how much understanding do we have. And I think interactive streaming are two things that we kind of get confused or we all talk about, but I kind of want to break down and go into why these issues are kind of important, where you will see them at, and then also talk a little bit about sound exchange, right? A lot of times we hear the term sound exchange, or we, on a daily basis, a lot of times one of the things that I'm doing is I'm working with producer agreements, right? And when I see producer agreements, I see a lot of times at the end of the producer agreement, some of the things that are missing the most are the sound exchange letters of direction, right? So we'll talk a little bit about the sound exchange letters of direction for all of you producers in here getting placements. A lot of times producers forget to say, hey, I need the sound exchange letter direction. So when the artist gets paid, I'll also get paid for the digital royalties. We'll talk a little bit about that. Let me go through the chat. If y'all have any questions, please feel free to drop them in, and we'll talk a little bit about that. If my camera goes in and out too, don't mind. It's just a little shadow or whatever it is. So let's see. Let me see if we got any questions. We can go to the next slide. Is it worth putting your music on BeatStars if you're publishing admissions in SongTrust? And can SongTrust collect royalties from BeatStars? Okay. That's a really great question. So is it worth putting your music on BeatStars if you're publishing admin in SongTrust, right? And can SongTrust collect royalties from BeatStars? So To the first part of your question, I think one of the key things that you kind of got to think about here is when you're thinking about publishing, right? That's what we do at BeatStars, right? So, say for example, you got a song, you put that song out, and one of your focuses is you want to collect all your streaming revenue, you want to collect your publishing revenue, and then you may also want to sell that particular track or song or beat on the marketplace. So you can put that on the marketplace. Once you put that on the marketplace, and then you distribute it, and you can collect, your sound recording royalties, and you can also collect your publishing. So, say for example, you are with another publisher, another publishing administrating company, or whatever it may be. You can still come and put your music on the BeatStars marketplace. You can still, and it depends on your deal, but you can still distribute your music, right? And if you distribute your music, if you have another publishing admin, they can still collect your publishing. And also, if you don't have, let's say, for example, you don't have pub admin, right? One of the things that you can do is you can put your music on BeatStars right through the marketplace, through distribution, and then you can turn around and use BeatStars publishing as well. So very, very, very nice to meet you too. And yeah, if you all have any other questions, feel free to drop in. We'll go ahead and get started. Let's go through just like a quick recap. So last week, one of the things that we were talking about was BeatStar's partnership with Cosign. Um, that was really, really something that we did that I thought was really cool because it'll put us in a position, for the community to be able to go in and get songs copyrighted, right? So if you got a track out there and you want to make sure that your the name of this protect your art. And one of the ways that you do that is copyright, right? You have an automatic copyright as soon as you put your work out. But one of the things that you want to be able to do is if someone was to steal your work or rip you off, if you have a copyright registration, then at that point you can file a suit. So that's really the main focus there with that partnership. And if you're looking to copyright your work, all you gotta go do is go to cosign.com/beatstars. And definitely just go in. You can copyright it super easy, really affordable. One of the cool things too, they just put out a little graphic about how to protect your NFTs. So, you know, if y'all got some time, y'all on your phones, go to cosign.com or go to Instagram or go to Twitter or go to Facebook and type in COSYND cosign. I'll spell it out for you all in the chat. And just follow them, right? Show them love, and just follow them. Reach out to them. Tell them that Attorney Kyle and BeatStar sent you, and just work with them, right? We can go to the next slide. Let's go to the next one. So I like to do this in the beginning. Let's talk about the purpose of Protect Your Art, right? The purpose of this course is to introduce students to the legal, business, and creative aspects of the entertainment industry. Entertainment law consists of a broad array of core legal issues combined with relationship issues that relate to producing and protecting entertainment products and talent. Attorney Cal, what does all that mean? Basically, what we're trying to do here is okay, you understand the marketing, right? You understand the actual how to put the beats out, when you need to put them out, how to create, how to collab. But once you do all of that stuff, at that point, and this stuff becomes, your marketing working, your distribution is working, all of these things are working for you. Now, how do you take that information, right? And how do you take all of the things that you accomplished and make sure that that art that you created, that marketing plan, that merch, those songs, those compositions, how do you make sure that all of that stuff is protected, right? And how do you make sure, that you're not getting taken advantage of? Um, and how do you know what key things to look for? And that's kind of the goal of what we're doing here. And today the focus is around understanding non-interactive streaming and interactive streaming, because as a producer, right, and artist, if you're an artist, if you're a manager, your label, may be all of those, right? You're gonna get in situations where there's gonna come a time where you're gonna have to figure out, okay, this is non-interactive streaming. So because it's non-interactive streaming, I get paid a certain type of way, right? Because it's interactive streaming, I get paid a certain type of way. But today we're going to figure out what those ways are so that when you're looking at these agreements, you can read an agreement and say, nah, this is talking about sound exchange, but where's the sound exchange letter of direction so I can actually make sure that I get paid, right? And that's the focus. All right. We can go to the next slide. So these are some of the recaps that we had from um, the previous live series. So what is a copyright? We talked about that, right? A copyright automatically occurs as soon as you get whatever it is that you're working on in a fixed form. So say it's a kit, say it's a beat, say it's a loop, say it's just a clap or a drum or a horn or whatever it may be. Once you get these things into a fixed form, right? um, you get these things into a fixed form. At that point, you have automatic copyright, right? Then from that point, we talked about why it's important to register your copyrights. If you have, once you get that automatic copyright, if you do not, right, if you do not have a registration, and that's hence why we're doing the part of cosign. If you don't have a registration, you can't file a suit in court, right? So that's super important, right? If you don't file, if you don't have that registration, you can't file that suit, and that's why it's important to kind of figure out, all right, how can I register these copyrights? And that's what cosign is going to help you all do, right? So that's kind of the recap. And if y'all have questions, on copyright or whatever it may be, definitely reach out to me in DMs, or you can ask right now or whatever it may be, however you feel most comfortable. Just reach out to me. We can go to the next slide. We can go to the next slide. Let's see. I think it's going to the next one. So today we're going to talk about non-interactive streaming versus interactive streaming, right? Um, and let's talk about why this is important. So before we jump in, I just want to kind of make a distinction as to why these topics come up, and why there's something that you got to be aware of. So I was on Twitter probably about, uh, maybe about a week and a half ago, and I saw a tweet go out, and it was talking about song rights holders, right? Owners of sound recordings were in an uproar, and have always been in an uproar, because they're not being paid when music is played on radio, right? So there are a lot of radio stations that exist. And one of the things that happens in the United States is, say for example, as a producer, you get a big hit, right? You get a placement on a great one of the largest artists or biggest artists. You get a placement on their album. And now, in order to work that single, say it's a single by like DJ Khaled, right? Every single that he has is gonna end up on radio. It's just bound to happen. So say you get a big placement on a big single, you take that single and you've done a producer agreement, right? So in that producer agreement, you're entitled to, an advance or whatever it is. You're entitled to some publishing. You're entitled to maybe a producer royalty, and you're entitled to get those sound exchange royalties. One thing that you're not entitled to if that song goes on the radio is a sound recording royalty. What does that mean, Attorney Cal? So typically, when you think about a song as it's played, online, say on Spotify, you're getting the royalties from the sound recording side, and you're getting the royalties from the publishing side, right? And from that creates a pot, right, for the artist and for the songwriter, and that's how you benefit from your art. Well, when songs get played on the radio, the radio stations are only paying out on the songwriter side, right? So what's happening is artists, right, or performers, or even producers that are entitled producer royalty, they're not being paid for those songs that are being put out. So if if you don't understand that, right, and you're signing your rights away, or you're not asking certain questions, then you won't realize, like, okay, I get that I have all these producer royalties that I'm owed. But one of the things that I need to do is advocate for more rights, so that not only can I get paid when this song is played on Spotify, but as it's played on the radio and I hear it and I'm in the car and I'm listening, I'm getting paid while I'm listening, right? So that's just something to think about, something to look for. And that's why today we're talking about non-interactive streaming to interactive streaming. Um, I think this is a great time to do this, but if you understand what interactive streaming is, if you understand what non-interactive streaming is, please drop in the chat right now. If you know what interactive streaming is, drop in the chat. If you know what non-interactive streaming is, drop it in the chat. If you don't know, type a question mark and say, "Hey, like I don't really know the difference," and that way I can kind of see, where everyone's at. But we can go to the next slide, and while you all, type it up or add your comments, we'll talk a little bit about it. So first, what is non-interactive streaming? Does anybody know that's here what non-interactive streaming is? Anybody know? So I see a question mark. Don't really know. Um, Anybody knows what non-interactive streaming is? Anybody knows? Anybody knows? Anybody knows? Okay. So non-interactive streaming. This is all it is. So when you think about going onto a uh let's say a Pandora, or let's say you buy a new car, right? And let's say he said it's a music you can't collect royalties on. That's partly, it's not all the way true, but it's a part of it, right? Um these Pandora. So say for example, you go on Pandora, interactive, non-interactive, right? The one that's, when you wake up in the morning, you just turn it on, you go to your favorite artist and music is generated based on that. Or let's say you buy a new car, you go to Carvana because they popping right now. You say, look, I need that new car. And when you buy that new car, it comes with a subscription for Sirius XM, or what's the other one? Not Sirius XM. Maybe is iHeartRadio Sirius XM, or I can't think of the other one. But you get that subscription. Now, when you get that subscription, right, and you go to those stations, the internet radio stations, right, and they put your music and they put into this mix, right? Um, at that point, it's non-interactive, right? You're leaning back, so it's a lean back type of situation, like Fat Joe say, lean back. It's a lean back situation because you're not picking specifically what you want to listen to, right? At those instances, basically you're being, picked. The things that are being played are being picked for you, and at that point, you're not able to choose exactly what you want to listen to. That's what you consider non-interactive streaming. So typically those sites, like we said, Pandora, Sirius XM, and other internet radio sites, they have non-interactive streaming. Now, what's interactive streaming, right? Interactive streaming is the complete opposite. So when you think about, all right, I don't really want to when I got up this morning, I don't really want to just listen to a station. I know I want to listen to, let's see what Attorney Cal listen to. Money Man, Kodak Black, Drake, uh, anything like that. That's what I want to listen to. So when I'm about to go run, I'm like, oh, I really like that Super Bowl halftime, so I'm just finna listen to straight Dr. Dre, Ice Cube. I want to just be in a West Coast type of bag. So now I go in and I go to my Spotify, I go to my Apple Music, I go to my Tidal, I go to my YouTube, and I say, look, I want to listen to this specific song. So I get that specific song, I listen to that specific song, and I find and I pick those specific songs that fit my mood or whatever I'm feeling. That is what you call lean in, and that's interactive streaming. So non-interactive is all of this is being picked for me, right? Interactive is not being picked for me, right? And these are the main things that you got to consider and that you have to think about, right? Thinking about the difference between when you get, and you can do it when you have Pandora, and it's just a certain way, and you have, Apple Music, you have Spotify, and it's a certain way. Now the next question is, how do you collect your royalties for interactive streaming, right? Um, the thing that you want to think about is with interactive streaming, right? And that was the last thing we talked about, so we'll touch on it. Typically, these are the royalties that you're collecting. You're collecting the sound recording royalties, or if you sign to someone, whoever owns that master, they're collecting the sound recording royalties. You're also collecting the performance royalties, right? So that is your publishing and your songwriting, right? And then you're also generating a mechanical royalty. So every time that song that Dre that you chose, that you want to listen to, at that point you're able to go in and you're saying now, boom, I want to choose this, I want to listen to this, and every time you press play, it's generating a sound recording royalty, it's generating a performance royalty, which is songwriting and publishing, and it's generating a mechanical royalty, right? So that goes back to the question we had earlier, where how does that work in the BeatStars ecosystem? So, for example, you got your beat on BeatStars, you take your beat, you put it on BeatStars distribution, and then once it goes live on Spotify, you put it on BeatStars Pub. Somebody goes online and they're looking for, let's just say they're looking for Tiger Backwoods, right? Well, let's just say they're looking for Buffon Lee. Well, let's just say they're looking for, who else we got in here? Victoria, aka Dice. They're looking for y'all music specific on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube title. They click on it, they listen to the song, they click on it, and they keep going. As they clicked on it, that's an interactive stream. You're generating again that sound recording royalty on that master, that published royalty, that songwriting royalty, and that mechanical royalty, right? Now, let's say, instead of them actually going to the song, you still did everything the same as that way, putting your music out. But now your music is out on Pandora and it's in a playlist, right? So Pandora, it has shuffled and did all this stuff, and now your music is in that rotation or in that playlist. From that, what's gonna happen is you're gonna receive two types of royalties, right? Excuse me. You're gonna receive those digital royalties from the sound exchange side, right? And then you're gonna receive those performance royalties, right? You're gonna receive your publishing and your songwriters royalty, right? So instead of receiving that master royalty, right, you're gonna be receiving that sound exchange royalty when you have that non-interactive streaming, right? And the reason why that's important is because first thing that we need to always make sure that we're doing is we signed up for Sound Exchange and we're selecting that we want Sound Exchange to collect those royalties, right? Because a lot of times people don't even think about Sound Exchange, right? We think about distribution, we think about publishing. Sometimes we may even think about mechanical royalties, but a lot of times people don't even think about Sound Exchange and the value that they provide. So, Attorney Cal, what is Sound Exchange? Like, why is Sound Exchange important? Why does it matter? Right? Why is there why is there a need for Sound Exchange? Right? What Sound Exchange does and what has happened, Sound Exchange was created, right? And it's the entity, basically, it's working on behalf of the government to make sure that artists, performers, songwriters, producers, feature artists are paid out those digital royalties, right? So they're like an arm of the government, and it's a free service, right? And at that point, they make sure that you know, they collect those royalties that are owed to you. One thing that you have to think about with sound change and why it's important, and it goes back to my earlier conversation, is when we're dissecting a producer agreement. Sorry about that. When we're dissecting a producer agreement, typically what we're seeing in a producer agreement is these things. You get your producer agreement, and typically your placement, and the agreement talks about the producer royalty, right? Or sometimes it doesn't. It may say a fee, right? So let's say, for example, you get a fee of $2,000 for the agreement, right? That's going to be your advance or your fee. Then once you get your advance or your fee, then at that point it talks about your producer royalty. Let's say the producer royalty is 3%. Then it says, okay, you made half of the song, artists make half, so you get 50% publishing, right? And then from that point, all the legal terms in there, and then there's gonna be another page that talks about how this money is paid out, right? That's gonna be like an attachment. And then at the end of that agreement, what you should look for and what you should always try to make sure that that's attached is what's called a sound exchange letter of direction. Sound exchange letter of direction. What that sound exchange letter of direction is going to do, it's going to make sure that when the artist gets paid for the interactive stream, the non-interactive stream, you're gonna, as a producer, also get paid, right? You're gonna be able to turn around and then at that point, collect those digital royalties from sound exchange. So that's really the key things here. You're talking about sound exchange, um, and I see the thing. It says fractions of a penny, of a halfpenny, right? True, but one of the things that I think um are really key here is when you're thinking about sound exchange, when you think about the DSPs, the way that the algorithm and the way that their technology is worked, right? It it's not like you say, right? It's fractions of a penny. So if you got a couple thousand streams, or even 100,000 streams, 200,000 streams, 300,000 streams, right? It seems like and ain't no money, but where the benefit comes, even as a producer, right? Let's say you're the producer of a hit, and that hit has 1 billion streams, right? And you're entitled to 3% producer royalty on that, and you're entitled to publishing right on that. And not only is this song being played on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, but it's also being played nonstop iHeartRadio, Sirius XM. All of these different sites that attract hundreds of millions of listeners a year, right? All of this stuff begins to add up. And if you don't have these certain things in place, or you don't understand in your agreements, right, that you shouldn't be signing over all your rights, right? Um, you know, you'll miss out on these things and somebody else will collect them. So that's kind of the main focus when we're talking about, sound exchange, and also the differences between interactive and non-interactive streaming. Um, does anybody have any questions as far as, you know, non-interactive, interactive streaming, things that you could do to collect your royalties, sound exchange, or any other questions that it may not even have to relate to, you know, um, this specific topic, but let me definitely know if y'all have any questions. I'm going through now to see if I see anything. I saw some earlier commentary question earlier, but I want to see if there's any questions. Track lib, the one you have to clear yourself, right? Let me see. We'll make it easy. Fee. He's speaking facts. I've had several songs I produce and instrumentals for artists that I'm getting big aspects on domestic, international that pay the big bill. Everything truly adds up. That's right. Like, a lot of times, what happens is it's really about catalog. Because say for example you got 1,000, and we talk about this shit. We've been saying this for a year now, right? The intellectual property is no different than a piece of real estate. So when you got thousands of songs, right? Even if you got 500 songs that you've done by yourself that you distributed, with content ID, all these different things, and then you got placements. Um, let's say you got 300 placements, right? 100 of them are great, 100 of them are good, and 100 of them are small, right? Um, but you never know how these things are going to happen, because let's say, for example, one of your songs gets sampled. That's what happens a lot of times, right? A lot of the things that we have from back in the day, um, they get sampled, right? Let's take a recent example. So the song by Kodak Black, Super, right? I love that song. Right? I sang that song word from word to the top of my voice, and that's my workout song. That's like my little, when I go work out this evening, that's the first song I listen to. So think about that whatever that sample is that's singing, it could have been superstars, right? That song may have just been generated for the purpose of that show, right? You know what I'm saying? It may have just been generated for the purpose of that show, or whatever it was used for in the beginning. But now that Kodak Black's attached his his lyrics, right? Song is probably be 2, 3 times platinum, and now their song is being played on radio, right? So it's getting they're receiving. If they got a producer royalty, they could be receiving those sound exchange royalties. They're receiving those publishing royalties, right? On the performance side, so they're receiving publishing and songwriting. They're also not only receiving that, but they're receiving mechanical royalties, right? So all of these things, and that's one good thing about knowledge and just different things is no matter when you start, right? I say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The best and the second best time is today. If you go ahead and you lock in on just these certain topics, it may not happen for you tomorrow. It may not happen for you 5 years from now. But if something were to get sampled or were to get a placement and a song takes off, and you're attached to it properly, you're gonna definitely benefit. So I kind of want to harp on that a little bit. Pandora is interactive. So one thing that's cool about Pandora, and while we're speaking on that, I do want to shout out their Pandora AMP app. They did have another app which was called like Next Big Sound or something like that, where you can go in and actually see like how many streams on Pandora like artists were getting, per week, per month, every 90 days and stuff like that. So I was doing that for a while, and it just got to a point where I guess they took it away. I don't know why they took it away, but I saw that to say that Pandora is interactive and non-interactive. So you have the option now on Pandora to actually go in and pick certain songs that you want to listen to and play over and over again. But you also still have that older functionality where it's just like a Pandora playlist of your favorite artist or favorite song or whatever it may be. So I think that's something cool to kind of think about. It is non-interactive, right? So if you just listening to those playlists, it's non-interactive. So that's where the sound exchange is coming in, along with your performance, the publishing, and the songwriting royalties. But there's also, the interactive side of Pandora where you're going to be getting paid those streaming royalties, right? On the sound recording side via your distributor, and then you're also going to be getting paid those publishing royalties, right? Royalties. Let's see. This question. I don't know why it's not letting me. Let's see. How far back can they collect from? How far back can we collect black box royalties? Um. So I guess yes, that's a great question. But the key is to kind of keep those royalties out of the black box, right? Because once they go into the black box, then they're split up amongst companies based on market share. So the overall goal is to make sure that your royalties do not go into the black box. And typically, black box royalties relate to performance royalties that go uncollected because 9 times out of 10 people are going to collect their sound recording royalties because those are going to be paid directly to them. Whereas if you're a producer, you probably got like a letter of direction and you'll get paid once the artists get paid, once you recoup. But typically that's those royalties are being paid direct. So black box really refers to those performance royalties, one on the publishing side and one on the songwriting side. And from that place, right, if those royalties typically to anywhere from, well, I would say 2 to 3 years, right? Say those royalties, or even probably less than that, those royalties go unelected. From that point, right, those royalties go into the black box, and um, they're dividing them up amongst people based on market share. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you do as a producer, as an artist, as a songwriter, right, and just as a business person, is to make sure that you put fail safes in place so your royalties don't go to the black box. Attorney Cal, what are those fail safes? One, you want to make sure that every song that you get, once you get, when we talk about this, as long as say it's a beat, for example, once you release that beat, you want to make sure that beat is also is so long as it's original, 100% original and non-exclusive. You want to make sure that you're distributing that beat, right? You want to make sure that you're distributing that beat and taking an ISRC code and registering the publishing performance royalties. So that's the pub, the songwriting, and those mechanical royalties. If you have a publisher like BeatStars Publishing, you're able to turn around and then grow that way and have a publisher with every release you put out, that's being registered automatically. Um, so if you're either registering it yourself or first distributing it, registering it, um, with manually or using a publisher, those things are key because that'll prevent your royalties from going into the black box. Maybe you cover this, but is YouTube considered interactive because the listener is actively choosing it? Yeah, YouTube is considered interactive streaming. Um, and again, one of the cool things about it is you're being paid out. You're being paid out on the recording side, right? And you're being paid out on um, the performance side, right? And one of the cool things about that is when you're thinking about content ID, right? I know we talk a bit about. We're gonna have a show about content ID and kind of go into the ins and outs of content ID, and that's coming. But one of the things that you're thinking about when looking at content ID is, as an artist, right, and as a songwriter, there's two levels, two sides of it. So you're being paid on that sound recording, and you're being paid on that composition. Once that ad runs across, whatever your song is being used in. So YouTube does, pay out as an interactive. That's interactive streaming because you're going in, you're leaning, and you're saying, I want to watch this specific video on YouTube, and if it's in a playlist, um, my guess, right, would be that it's still paid out the same way. Let's see, we still got a couple questions. Make sure I answer. Keep throwing the questions at me. I want to make sure I get all you all's questions. If I distribute and publish via BeatStars, it's not still secure enough. No, if you distribute and publish via BeatStars, what's gonna happen is you're gonna collect on your sound recording royalties. Um, and I want to say we do something where things go to Sound Exchange. And then you're also going to be able to collect on your publishing royalties as well. So performance, which is publishing, um, songwriting, and mechanical. So it's very, very secure. If you're on BeatStars Publishing, is Sound Exchange already handled or is that another step? So BeatStars Publishing, on the publishing side, publishing doesn't really relate to Sound Exchange because that's one side of it, and the Sound Exchange is a separate side of it. So those are your digital royalties. So if you're signed up to BeatStars Publishing, one of the things that you're able to do is collect those royalties for your compositions, but with BeatStars distribution, you're also able to collect those digital royalties via Sound Exchange. I believe it's completely separate. I have a specific understanding account. Right. So you're also able to go in and get. Sorry about that. You're also able to go in and actually set up that Sound Exchange account. You can do that for free, right? You can do it right now while we're on this. Go to soundexchange.com, register with Sound Exchange, and you can collect that, or you can do it, via distribution as well. So that's just something to think about. Side note: what's a good music library for sync that actually pays royalties and not royalty free? Um, I'm trying to think if I know any. I don't. I'm not sure if I know any, but definitely definitely DM me at Attorney Cal, and if I stumble across something that's beneficial for you, um, I'll let you know. Workstation, workstation beat. What's good? That boy butter. Is there a certain streams of revenue from Spotify, IG, or what you have that has to be made before it shows up in your pub info? I don't think so. I think all streams, no matter what, is counted. You just have to you will see it. And I'm not sure based on a specific agreement, but typically with distribution, those things happen like once a month, but with pub it's a little bit more spread out. So it's I want to say it's a specific thing that you have to do. Um, does not the same as B Stars Pub does. I can't really speak on what they do, but one thing I can say is um on the distribution side, that's your sound recording royalties for us. So that's just basically all the stuff that you're making on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Title, all of these different things that you're making on that side, and then the pub, right? Um, that's all the compositional stuff that you're making once those streams happen. So say for example, your song gets played on Spotify, you get those sound recording royalties. Then those sound, then that play generates a mechanical royalty, and all that also generates a publishing royalty, a songwriting royalty. That's what the pub is, collecting. So distribute the beat. Use the ISRC code to sound exchange. Also, is sound exchange different from song trust? Great question. So yeah, distribute the beat. You're gonna use that. You're gonna use the ISRC code not only to do your. You don't have a publisher, right? You're not. You're gonna use that ISRC code to do publishing, right? Um, do sound exchange. Um, and sound exchange is different from Song Trust, right? Song Trust is a pub admin, so they're collecting publishing royalties, right? They're collecting those performance royalties. So that's your publishing, your songwriting. I'm not sure if they collect mechanicals, right? That's what any pub administrator. So like BeatStars Pub, right? You're collecting those compositional royalties for your performance royalties. So that's your publishing, uh, your songwriting, and your mechanicals. Sound exchange is collecting those digital royalties that are generated when your songs are played via non-interactive streaming. So let's say, for example, your song is played on Pandora and it's not you just a playlist, or it's played on Sirius XM internet radio. Those digital royalties are collected by sound exchange, and then not only are digital royalties collected, publishing royalties, songwriting royalties are also collected from your publisher, or if you self-publish, you'll be collecting those from your. Um, you're very welcome. Very welcome. Um, workstation, workstation beat. So we need to separately register with SoundScan. Great question. So all of these sound and song and sound again. So what SoundScan does, which is really cool, um, and I this is something I do every Monday. So from like 8 to 12, right on Mondays, one of the things that I do typically is I take like 4 hours to just read. So one of the sites that I like, and I'll put my little sites in here so y'all can kind of look and I learned about these probably a while ago, but they're really great sites. It's dailydouble.com. Great site. Music business worldwide site. Um, let's see what another one. Music ally.com. It's another great site. And what these sites do, right? Especially his Daily Double, they report sales, right? So when your favorite artist, drops project, right? Those first week sales, and we all know this, they're so integral to whether people listen or go back. So in order to calculate those first week sales, get the stuff registered on Billboard, you need what's called SoundScan, right? Which is powered by this company called Nielsen, right? And what Nielsen SoundScan does, you take it that same ISRC code that we just talked about as it pertains to Sound Exchange, and you're publishing, and you take that ISRC code, you go to Nielsen SoundScan, right? Um, and you put that code in. It may even ask you for a UPC code, Universal Product Code. And that code, once you put it in, every time that song is streamed, because every song that's streamed is connected to ISRC code. So once you have an ISRC code, that connects everything. It connects the publishing, it connects your distribution, it connects the Billboard charts, right? So when you go to his Daily Double and you look and it says such and such and sold 16,000 copies, 25 million streams, 40 million streams, that's because Billboard, right, being powered by Nielsen, is collecting that data, collecting that information, and then presenting it in a way where people can say, oh, they sold this amount of copies. So I would always say register with SoundScan, because if you have a track that you're part of or that's doing really well, let's say, for example, we get 5 million streams, right? Um, you could potentially be in a situation where you could make the charts, make a heat seekers chart, make an independent chart, make a producer chart, make this type of chart. But if you don't have those things properly registered with SoundScan, then they won't come up for Billboard. Let's see. If you sign up for publishing long after you've distributed your music, can you collect retroactive royalties? You definitely can. Um, that's one of the cool things I think about um, publishing, right? Distribution, you collecting those at that at that point of um, kind of closer, right? A month, couple months after, right? Versus with publishing, it's a little bit longer than that. But when you register, as long as those royalties have not been collected by somebody else, right? Disclaimer, or they have not went to the black box, then at that point, you can turn around, register that stuff with your in the publishing portal, and then you'll get paid those royalties retroactively. So that's a really really great question. We used to register our hard sales too, like our CD release party sales into SoundScan, trying to hit the charts. Definitely. Um, and what's crazy is like a couple years ago, right, like maybe 2, 3 years ago, people was doing like there was this thing where you could, if you sold like a t-shirt, or if you sold this or you selling this, people would submit that stuff, right? Would get those sales verified, and they would submit that stuff, and they would try to use it to chart. And that's why you would see our sale 385,000 first week sales, because there was just so much you could do. But now the rules have kind of got smaller. Um, so there's like a limit on things that can be sold, right? And how they can be sold. And also, when we know we talked about this, 150 streams, right, equal one single sale, and 1,500 streams equal one album sale. So that's something to think about and how those charts are calculated. One thing that I will say too is I was watching an interview, challenge each of you to watch it. It was Roddy Rich talking, and he was talking about how like his album sales were like 60,000. One of the things that he said was, and it's very, very interesting how he explained it, he dropped a single late at night. And late at night ended up doing, he said it was on his way to be 2 times platinum. He was saying, had he released his album, which did 60,000 in pure, streaming album sales within a time period specified by Billboard, um, coupled with the 2 times platinum single, he would have sold almost 180,000 units first week. Been number one, and people would have said, "Oh, he didn't fall off." In my personal opinion, that was a great album. Um, but it just goes to show you how valuable the charts are, especially now with people's perception of music is that it's hot based on those first week sales. Literally, I just search sometimes what are the first week sales, and that's kind of why SoundScan and Billboard and all that stuff is important. Can you put your IG in the chat? Yep, it's at attorney Hio. And I'm the same on Twitter as well. Let's see, another question. For publishing submission, if it's just a beat I distributed, no lyrics, do I select composer, producer, song lyrics, or do I select both? So I would just say composer, producer, because like you said, there's no lyrics there. Um, I definitely would select just composer. Question. This week I seen a producer trying to claim ownership of a bunch of loops that got placed recently. He claims that the loops were stolen from him by all the other producers that got placements, but he hasn't shown any legitimate proof, only similar chord progressions. Apparently, the producer is lying and fraudulently hire text like this. Who has the burden of proof to follow on the person saying his loops were stolen, or the producers that got the placements? Great question. The burden of proof is always, and that's why copyright is important. The burden of proof is always on the person who says their work was stolen, right? Because at the end of the day, whoever creates something in a fixed form has an automatic copyright, right? No matter who it is, who did it first, once you create it in a fixed form, you have an automatic copyright. Um, from that, and that's where the license come from, right? Because you have that automatic copyright, you're able to give a person a license to use it, right? That's why it's important to get licenses, um, because if not, you could be infringing on that person's copyright. However, when a person, even though they have the automatic copyright, they if they feel like someone has infringed on their rights, then they have to have that registration in order to show that they created it first. That's why the registration is so important because it shows that original authorship. And the court won't let you file a suit because they may be saying, "Yo, you have an automatic copyright, but how do I know you actually registered first?" So the registration is there to make sure that the people that claim ownership is registered first. So typically, right, if someone's saying that a person stole their work, the burden of proof is on them to prove that that person stole it, and that's why that person typically has to file the suit because the person who's accused is not going to file a suit. They could right to say it's file a motion like a declaration for the court, a declaratory judgment or something like that, to say to court, hey, this is not this. But typically, what you're going to see happen in those instances is the person who's claimed that their work has been stolen or taken, they're going to have to file the suit, and they're going to have to prove original ownership, meaning they have a copyright, they have a certificate of registration, right, and then they're also going to have to prove that the person actually used their work, right. So that's something to kind of think about, um, and very very important. Let's see what it says. I'm literally registering tracks right now on my BMI watch list. Thank you. You're very welcome, Bufo. That's really all I have for this particular section. I think we can go to the next slide. I just kind of really wanted to highlight these little small little topics, right? Nothing that's like, oh, make or break, but everything that we talk about is it's important that we just kind of, even if we don't know 100%, right? Because I don't know 100%. And we know the difference between non-interactive and interactive, and sound exchange and all these things. When you all keep getting these placements and producer agreements and all these things that come up, right? You'll have an eye to say, oh no, I need this. Where's that sound exchange letter of direction, right? So that's important. So next couple topics, we're gonna talk about proper website legal, and these are not in any particular order. Accountable royalties, understanding sync. I saw a question today about sync. Understanding taxes, right? The goal is next session, right? And please tell everybody, um, the goal is to bring someone on and to talk about taxes. So it's not like he's not gonna be filing our taxes on here, right? But the goal is to bring him on and talk about why are taxes important. When should you file your taxes? Why should you file your taxes? What happens if you don't file your taxes? What are some of the things that you need to look at when talking about taxes in the music industry, right? So that's the goal. And then we're going to have a session about YouTube content ID, right? There's a lot of misconceptions about content ID, and when to use content ID, when not to use content ID, the things that content ID can be attached to. So we're going to have a session and really dive in and talk a little bit about content ID, why it's important, and the things that we need to think about. Let's see. When you register for BeatStars Publishing with your PRO info, do you use your producer name or real name? Someone asked me this and I wasn't sure. Definitely, I would always use my real name, because that's really everything's going to be attached to your real name, right? I know that with ASCAP release, you can list your producer name and stage name and tie it all on one count. So yeah, you can. You have the opportunity at a certain point to basically do professionally known as, to tie that in. But I would always say like use your real name. That way, in case you decide to change your name, whatever it may be, you're good to go. I'm taking care of my temper right now for my LLC to turn in. Super cool. And I think my guys will be in my, but I'll let them know. Thanks. Very welcome. We can go to the last slide. So as I always say, you know, if you have questions, do not hesitate to DM me on IG or Twitter. I just saw two questions in my IG. So I'm gonna get back to those. But please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. And yeah, I think that's super important, that we keep those open lines of communication. So you all know, like, if there's any questions I have, whether it relates to like what we talked about, um, these office hour, y'all. So we can jump on a Zoom, we can do whatever y'all want to do, jump on a call. But I just want to make sure y'all know that y'all have somebody at y'all's disposal that's your attorney and that you can like hit up and ask questions and I have to feel like, man, I don't know, should I sign this? Should I do this? How should I go approach this? That's what I'm here for. Um, Let me see. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Does anybody else have any other questions? If y'all don't, or if y'all do, but y'all want to ask like private, just hit me up at Attorney Cal, and we'll talk about it then. So, with that being said, thank you all for tuning in, asking great questions. Um, Again, non-interactive streaming, we're talking about things where the platform is picking that stuff for you, right? Um, Pandora, SiriusXM, and non-interactive, right? Or interactive streaming, right? Interactive streaming, and I'll answer this question too. Interactive streaming is your Spotify's, your Pandora, where you're choosing your music. When you're picking what you want to listen to, that's your interactive streaming. Before we go, what exactly does having an attorney on retainer mean? Great question. So having an attorney on retainer uh, is, and I see we still getting questions in, so let's keep going. Having an attorney on retainer is just basically saying, look, Attorney Cal, I want to pay you $100,000, but I want to be able to just call you and ask you questions and get you to file this, get you to handle this. Don't mind the music outside. Get you to do this for me. Typically, it's not going to be $100,000, but that's really what it is. You're just paying someone a fee, and that fee is like a monthly thing. Um, and you're able to just connect with them whenever you want. And it's not like you got to keep paying or negotiating. It's just like, I'm your attorney. We know you got a certain amount of business coming in. Um, we just work off of that retainer, right? One thing I will say is you have to be willing, um, as a producer artist, to put yourself out there and ask questions, right? So if you want to work with an artist, I mean not an artist, an attorney, right? Um, One thing that I will say is just ask what their price is, and if that attorney don't, they want a lot of money up front, or they want you to put a lot of money down, or they want you to do this or do that, and it's not something you're comfortable with, go to the next one, right? But you have to build a relationship with somebody where it works for your benefit, right? Where you feel like you're getting enough information, you could trust them, their turnaround is good, but you don't want to be choked by, okay, I know every month I pay this attorney $1,000, but is that really even benefiting you? So that's something to think about. Um, and there are a lot of attorneys out there that are really cool and will work with you. How much is percentage of each both incomes? I'm not sure if I understand um the question, but how much is percentage of both incomes? I guess when you're thinking of, if we're talking about non-interactive and interactive, um, for non-interactive, right, half of the income comes from the digital royalties, right, and then not half, but a side of the income comes from digital royalties, and then a side of the income comes from the publishing, right, and then when you're thinking about your interactive royalties, um, typically, the breakdown for streaming, right, for the sound recordings, I want to say probably about 50% of the income is just coming from sound recordings. 30% is going to Spotify, right, or Apple Music, or whoever it may be, right? They're taking 30%, and the remainder is really split up amongst publishing, mechanical royalties. So that's typically how it breaks down. But you also have to keep into consideration any fees you may have or whatever. Um, it's good to tell people I have an attorney on retainer. Why? Super important. Just saying, just knowing you have an attorney. Like if someone to play with you, knowing that you have an attorney and someone you can trust that's in your corner, important, right? Because you have an attorney, you hire your local attorney. Y'all build a great relationship. And say someone doesn't want to pay you, they may ignore you. But when they see that your attorney drafted up a letter, signed it, official attorney now, and has written a demand and saying they have to respond to it in a certain amount of time, it's gonna get a certain level of attention that maybe your email or whatever you had didn't get. So it's always great to build those relationships, even a friendship, right? You may have a friendship where you have an attorney, they may just be invested and want to help you. So to draft that letter, they may not charge you anything, or they may charge you a couple bucks or whatever it is. But you tell them like, look, I'm not at a level where I can put you on retainer or do this or do that. But I've been seeing you work in the community. You see I'm working in my community. So let's build, work together, and as y'all grow, it makes sense. I'm definitely going to reach out to make sure I have my bases covered. I feel like it's something I may be missing. Yeah, definitely reach out to me. I'm about to jump in my DMs on IG right now to see if there's anything. So definitely reach out to me if you all need anything. And thank you all for coming in, being attentive. Please feel free to share this episode with other people. And until next time, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Peace.